Hey nature lovers, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name is Kayla and this is Nature Will Nurture. I talk about houseplants, native plants, medicinal plants on occasion, so if any of those topics interest you, please like and subscribe. Today I'll be starting a 3-part series, I'm hoping it's 3 parts, about plants I've acquired from my job for free. Granted, most of these plants were replaced for a reason, especially the ones that I'm going to be talking about today. The next segment of this series will come out in about a month or so. So when I say they were replaced, I mean they were in their accounts, like offices or what have you, and were replaced by fresher, prettier, more beautiful plants because our business is very much about the aesthetic, but also the biophilia that we as humans have towards nature. And so by bringing in a touch of nature into your office space where you work or where you visit, so these plants were most often just not quite making the cut in terms of beauty, though I felt they were still worth me keeping, at least for the time being, or they're cuttings that I propagated when I was pruning the plants at work. So let's get started. So I have a cat on my lap right now, which I may have included footage already of her, so she's so cozy that I think I'll just try to work with it, and maybe she'll scooch off as I'm moving around a bit. So the genus that we're going to be talking about today, because I have so many of them from work, are Dracaenas. They're a very reliable group of plants that we use in our industry, and there's a lot of different cultivars and colors that come from it and forms now. So some of them I will be talking about were formerly Sansevieria, so I'll specify those. Sansevieria, if you're unfamiliar, are snake plants. So they're still called snake plants, but they've been moved into a genus called Dracaena, so we'll be talking about a few of those today as well. Now the care for Dracaenas pretty much across the board is to let them dry in between waterings. Their root systems are very sensitive, generally on the side of underwatering than overwatering. Now if you're going to have plants in highlight situations, you might not want that plant to dry out completely, depending on how frequently you check the plant. Or you don't want it to dry out for too many days, so you have to keep a close eye on it if it's in highlight. If you have the plants in a lower light condition, you want to give that plant a couple of days in between to be dry, so that way you don't risk overwatering or have leaf spots, or stem rot, which I've seen a lot. The stalk will turn brown or black from the base near the soil line, and the plant will often have wrinkles, which I think I have some pictures I'll try to include of some plants that I have taken pictures of, recorded for this purpose. But generally medium indirect light is best for the plants, generally. So we'll also be talking about snake plants, which can tolerate much higher light than usually most of the dark leaf varieties of Dracaenas. So I guess I'll start small. This plant is Dracaena Reflexa, just a straight green variety. Also, I had taken them from cuttings while pruning some plants at work. This plant is called Dracaena Reflexa Anita, I believe. I'll have to double check, but I believe that is the scientific name and the cultivar name. This plant was actually flowering when I pruned it, so we usually don't like to have the plants flower because we need them to focus on the foliage, so I had to prune it back, and I decided to try some of the cuttings, and these are the only 2 that took root, and they're actually growing new growth points, and so this hangs out back there. Come to think of it, I think I've been seeing these a little bit more at the big box stores, in much larger forms, of course. Yeah, it's very grassy. I have to keep it out of the reach of my cats. Now this one actually came from a living wall. It is, to my knowledge, Dracaena. I'm not sure what the species name is. I'll put it on the screen if I can find it. I think it came from the warnekii series, meaning striped. So the striped series of the Dracaena genus that I can't think of the name of. But this one is called Gold Star. You may have seen it in big box stores, and it's a pretty nice grower. And so this came from a living wall, and it's in a 6-inch pot. And the reason this one was replaced, because it looks pretty good, was because it was getting to be too large, and it was starting to fall out of the wall, and also was just jutting out too far. And so I just needed to bring in a shorter, smaller plant, which can be hard to maintain a plant in a living wall like this with 2 plants that remain in it. Oftentimes I'll lose one of the stalks to overwatering because it can be kind of hard to maintain sometimes. So I think this one I've had for some time now though. So it's recovered pretty well. The stem looks slightly zigzaggy, and that is from turning the plant when it was in the living wall. This is a newer acquisition, I like to say. Basically, I just pulled this one into retirement. This is a Dracaena Compacta, which you may also see out and about. As you can see though, it's been in its spot for a long time. In fact, the roots, it needs some repotting as soon as I can. So I think that will help too long term. These brown tips will hopefully just be shed, and I'll just have a nice stalk and then leaves at the top, and it'll be a nice little tree. So that's a project to be done soon. This is another common Dracaena that I recommend in low light areas. This is Dracaena Janet Craig. Mine has a bit of sunburn on it, so it's not the prettiest specimen. And the sunburn came from the time spent outside in the summer without being properly acclimated. That was because we moved, and I had no place to put the plants. So they had to stay outside until this room was ready. Yeah, so I have a couple of these. This actually wasn't just, there were 2 plants in this 6-inch pot, but I separated them, and the other one is out and about still. The reason this one was replaced is because I had this interesting browning near the stem that I was concerned about, and I think it might lead to some of the issues that it's been having with its leaves. So yeah, just hanging on to it. It doesn't look too bad. It still brings life to the spot that it's in. Gives that jungle vibe feeling. So I'll keep hanging on to it and keep trying to improve my care for it. This next one's going to be a little hard to show. This is a Dracaena Carmen. That's the cultivar name. I have been seeing these out in nurseries a bit more. Basically, it's like a Janet Craig with the dark leaves, but then it has this green striping on the outside, and the leaves aren't too curly. There's another curly variety out there. That one's called Dorado. I don't have any of those with me anymore. This one was replaced. You can't see the tallest stalk, but it is not that great looking. So I replaced it. This one too isn't the best looking. It's got a lot of leaf spots and browning. So there's a lot of browning and whatnot, but I thought this plant in particular, of the 3 in the pot, has some white striping that I find very gorgeous, and so I am going to keep it for that purpose. But come warmer months, I'll probably repot this plant and separate it from the other 2 plants, while the other 2 I might get rid of, so we'll see as time goes on. So that's it for the Dracaena, the leafy Dracaenas that I have. And then now I'll go through a few of the snake plants or Dracaena, other Dracaena varieties I have. This one is Dracaena, I don't know the species name, but it's sold as fernwood. We don't commonly use this one because of how spiky it is. It can be kind of hazardous. So this one was actually, I think, a pup from She gave it to me at the greenhouse. I think it was a pup from an adult plant, and I expressed interest in it, and so she gave it to me. The care with this one, I neglect quite a bit actually. In these leaves, they store a lot of moisture, a lot of water. So unless I had this in very bright light and it wasn't winter time, I probably might be watering this a bit more frequently, but I haven't done that yet. So yeah, it doesn't need much attention. I do keep this out of the way of the cats, though it is poisonous, or at least will upset them if they do get to it, and because of the form where it kind of looks grassy and pokey, they are going to go for it. So I keep this one out of the reach of my cats. This one is a very well-known plant. If you ever go out and about to offices or hotels or anything like that, or any greenhouses and nurseries, you're going to see this plant. This is Dracaena trifasciata, Zylanica, or Sansevieria trifasciata, Zylanica as some people know it as. And this too is also a plant that retains a lot of moisture. I've actually underwatered this plant and am trying to rehydrate it back to its best. A lot of this plant I actually started from cuttings, as you can see. And so that's been cool to watch these grow. And this I talked about in my low light plant video, that these actually do much better in medium to high light in terms of their growth. I will show you another plant that was in lower light conditions and what would happen to it if you kept your plant in low light conditions for a long period of time. So this one I try not to neglect in a low light situation too much, but my better recommendation is to grow it in medium to high light. And that way you can water it once every 1 to 2 weeks, especially if you keep it in terracotta like I do. That way it wicks away any excess moisture and you won't rot your plant out, because that can be pretty easy to do. This very not so pretty plant is an example of what would happen to a plant if you kept it in low light. You will thin it out, guaranteed. This plant was probably overwatered. I can't even remember right now where I replaced it. Yes, I do. I do remember where I replaced it. So what I'm hoping is I'll probably repot it and keep it in better light, and possibly even put it outside over the summer because they do so well outside. And I'll get some nice new growth from that, and we'll see where it goes. I think I only have one other Sansevieria. This is Dracaena trifasciata laurentii, or laurentii, depending on how you say it. And that is with the yellow striping on the outside. Also a very common plant to see out and about. And that is it for the plants I received from work for free, Dracaena version. Remember to subscribe to see the next segment of the series, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.